I'm truly convinced now that if the spiritual connection's there, anything's possible with the other three.
Right. Where you're going to set your mind, where you're going to set your heart, but it's also that spiritual of where are you going to surrender today? What are you going to surrender? Right, if I'm going to live this other 167, it's got to be a mind and a heart.
There are some sins that drag me down that won't drag you down.
Right.
When you go to a Christian for advice, and we always seem to go to God as the answer. But He is. I mean, that's like it doesn't matter. There have been so many things. I'm getting worked up now, I'm sorry. It's just one of those things that I'm sorry, but with Him, anything's possible, and without Him, it doesn't matter what you do, you ain't going to get it right.
A lot of Christianity in America, we don't have committed Christians. The heroes of my faith is not the first part of chapter 11. The people that are faithful to God when you can't do nothing. To me, those are my heroes.
As long as I know I'm where He wants me, I don't care. That peace and that humility and that freedom comes from understanding that whatever He's doing, I trust Him.
Yeah.
It's easy to be faithful when everything's going right. Being faithful regardless of your circumstances.
My college buddies think I'm crazy when I say this. I had never eaten Sheetz food until like a couple years ago.
Right.
I'd never had it. I mean, I thought it was.
Well, it's a gas station.
I know it's good gas station food, but it's still gas station food, right? And then I tried it one time and I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Listen,
their hamburger, good. I know Nate and his friends, when they were in high school, they'd eat at Sheetz all the time. And the mozzarella sticks, what teenagers eat.
Yeah.
But I said, you know what? I've been eating a lot of salads lately. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna try it. I said, what? How bad can it be?
Yeah.
And John Brown, that was one of the best little salads I've eaten in my life. It had a lot of ham in it, avocado.
Well, what are you getting a salad for?
I'm just trying to. I'm going to be 202 by the end of the year.
So that's 30
it's
pounds?
on recording now.
Is that
What?
30 pounds?
What?
Is that 30 pounds?
No. Well, it was at the end of last year when I put it to you this way. There was a movie called Iron Claw. All right. I probably wouldn't recommend it to our listeners unless you are a wrestling fan. And I grew up a wrestling fan my whole life. And so the Von Erichs were a family down in Texas. One of the brothers' name was Kevin. He weighed in at 202 when he wrestled. And I've always wanted to be 202 because that to me, that's a good weight, 202.
Welcome back to the other 167. Garrett Lill, Kenny Lewis, Ben Pierce.
I got a topic I'll bring up. I want to ask you, Kenny. No, I think you're going to like this question. How much of it is mental? How much of it is spiritual? And is it because I hadn't thought it all the way through, but I know there's a big piece of both. And when I say mental, not just necessarily, not a mental illness type thing, just how much of it is mental and how much of it is spiritual.
You mean for sin?
No, as far as choosing and making those choices and walking in that joy and all that. I'm just curious would you even say it, or would you say it's all spiritual?
I wouldn't say it's all spiritual.
Yeah.
We have to make that choice.
Yeah, you have to make that choice.
We have to make that choice every day. I have to make it up every morning I get up. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Or
who's going to call the shots in my life today?
Yeah, I think it's a
that's
combination.
A choice. That's a big choice.
Yeah. But we have to initiate it, and He'll see us through. The Bible, we always have to come first to Him. Seek first the kingdom of God. Pray without ceasing. Or if you seek me with your whole heart, I will answer. So we have to be willing to give it up. Then He'll take it from there, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. You're exactly right, and I think it's one of, I don't know if I can put a percentage on it, but I think it's almost borderline. I don't want to say it's 33, 33, 33, 33 and a third, 33 and a third, 33 and a third. And what I would almost say is it mental, spiritual, and physical? I think it's more mental and spiritual. Mental is this: be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Set your mind on the things that are above. You see, oftentimes what determines our path and our attitudes and where we're going to end up, it's where we set our minds.
Right.
If we think we're going to have a crappy day, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have one of those days. If you think, okay, Lord, you got this. Your mind determines that.
Yeah.
But then there's a big piece of it that says, all right, what my mind has been set on, now I have to live by the Spirit. And the Spirit now controls me, leads me. And so that goes with a little bit of mind and body. So
I think what you're saying, what I'm hearing is your body follows your mind.
sure it does.
Yeah.
Well, how else is it going to be transformed?
Yeah.
That's to be changed on the outside
I mean,
now and
even
on the
Jesus
inside.
talked about that. It's not what goes in your body; it's what comes out of it.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
Well, I think we've neglected.
battlefield of the mind.
I feel like now we're leaving one thing out from 7th grade health class, which was emotional health too. So
Okay.
in health class, there was spiritual health, physical health, mental health, and emotional health.
Right.
And I think that when you said when you started dividing up into thirds, I thought we were going to add emotional health.
Yeah.
So
Well, see, I was talking about how you live, being that would be the physical part,
Yeah.
and emotional part. And see, me personally, I tend to think that and not always, because there's always people that might be imbalanced or some other, whether it's hormone deficiencies, things like that. But I believe oftentimes the emotions follow the physical and mental. Again, set your mind on those things. Now, again, emotions can range.
yeah,
And we talked a little bit about that last week with, all right, so where does truth come in when our emotions are all over the place? Well, the truth should come in to kind of help balance those.
mental and emotional is hard to distinguish between sometimes in our world.
I think so.
And I think that what I would weigh in on this would be to say that this, and you're saying it, I think the spiritual controls all of the other three.
Yeah.
If I try to mentally improve my spiritual health, it won't work.
Right.
But my spiritual health will improve my mental health, it'll improve my emotional health, and it can improve your physical health. And then now I think the part that I'm not quite answering is that your physical decisions are going to start to play into all of those.
Right.
Eventually, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, your body breaks down. I mean,
I can be as happy as I can be and as mentally healthy as I can be and spiritually connected as I can be. If
Still
I'm
your
physically
body.
sinning, it's going to come back and bite me 100%. And then that's going to domino.
And that kind of goes back to 1 Corinthians 4. I used that recently in a 1 Corinthians 4, 2 Corinthians 4. Sorry about that. I have to look it up, but I used it recently in a funeral of, our outer shell, if you will, our outer body is decaying daily, but the inner man is being renewed day by day by day. And so I think it's one of, the body has a part of that. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out is, all right, so how much of it is, all right, I'm going to set my mind on the things that are above. I'm gonna be transformed by the renewing of my mind. So I'm gonna fill my mind with the scriptures. All right. So how does that impact everything else? And my argument or my thesis, I guess, would be is I think it impacts everything pretty heavily. Doesn't mean everything's gonna work right or do that, but at the same time, I believe it impacts how we'll think, act, and feel.
It's so hard for me to distinguish between. To me, the spiritual is in its own category. Honestly, like I couldn't even really to even try to say, well, the spiritual affects all these other. If one thing is controlling all the other three things below, then to me they're not even in the same category anymore. It's a what first comes this, then comes that. Because I can give examples of all of these. I mean, I think the mental is a pretty easy one to work your way through or to think of examples or whatever. Physically, though, I'll give an example of this. So during COVID, look, I drank like a fish during COVID. It was almost socially acceptable, it seemed like at that time, to drink too much, and I drank way too much. And at the end of COVID, at the end of that year, I remember, for no other reason than I just knew that it wasn't sustainable. Like, I just knew, physically speaking, if I keep doing this, it doesn't matter if it's a sin or not. I'm not going to live much longer if I keep doing it like this. Like, there's just no way. So I tried to quit. And the first 3 days, I had the worst headache I've ever had in my life for 3 days. And I made a comment, or not the worst of my life. It was a pretty rough headache, though, for 3 days. Felt like I was hungover for 3 days, and then I went drinking. And I said something to a buddy of mine, and he's like, well, yeah, the way you've been drinking, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't have some physical that's kind of coming back on you a little bit.
Your body's craving it and everything,
Yeah, and I could say the same thing about other habits, physical habits, things like that I've had a hard time quitting in the past. And I kind of have touched on this before with that. But any of these things that God's tried to clean up in the last 6, 8, 9, 10 months, none of them have come with that.
Right.
Okay? I mean, now there might still be a mental urge or an emotional urge or something, but the physical side, I've seen it change the physical, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And I've definitely seen it change the emotional side in that you can be in the exact same circumstances this day versus that. And when the spiritual piece is there, you don't notice it emotionally.
Yep.
When the spiritual piece
You're
is
right.
not there, it comes back with a vengeance. It
Yep.
tries to make up for lost time that it didn't get yesterday with, you know? So I think it's all the above. I mean, I'm truly convinced now that if the spiritual connection's there, anything's possible with the other three.
Right.
And I know that there are, I'm not trying to say that in a way that, like, if you have if you are facing a physical challenge and it's not, and it's still there, that you're not connected with God. It's not that it's always,
No.
but
Those things are real and they happen.
But he can. There's nothing that you can bring to me and say I'm facing this challenge that I would admit to you. I don't think God can handle that one.
Right.
He can. It's like you wrote down that time. What can God not handle? Nothing.
That's right.
Well, yeah, but he messed it up.
He did.
I want to be
Yeah.
clear. He messed it up.
He said, and he tried to blame it on you. You said you asked the wrong question.
And he was sitting over there writing.
How did you ask that?
Huh?
You asked it wrong.
And he was sitting over there. I got one. Yeah.
But going back, I think it's one of, and I think that's the answer to, the other 167 is that spiritual. Where you're going to set your mind, where you're going to set your heart, where as a man thinketh, so is he.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also that spiritual of where are you going to surrender today? What are you going to surrender? How are you going to go about that? And I think that's really the hard part of, all right, if I'm going to live this other 167, it's got to be a mind and a heart. And maybe that's why he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your body, all your soul.
You remember the basketball story I told for a few weeks back where I was shooting basketballs and I couldn't make anything, and then I just started to really try to just find that piece, and then everything started going in. Okay, well then what changed? Was it mental? Was it okay? Well, something physically changed to make the ball start going in. I don't have a clue what, but anybody that follows sports at all knows that most of the time, if you are and I'm not a good basketball player by any means, but when you have the physical ability to do something, then whether you do it every time or once out every 50 times is usually more mental than it is physical. Yeah. So was that me going? I mean, there was a 100% correlation between like 2 for 10 and then start trying to find that piece, and I hit 9 out of 10. All right. And it was a 1-to-1 correlation between. Now, was it physical that changed, mental that changed? I don't know, but the spiritual changed. Right. I know that. And then when I started getting fixated on that and lost the spiritual, started missing again. Right. So it affects all of it. To pinpoint the lack of desire to drink or the lack of desire for any sin, okay, does that come from him changing the physical? Is it changing the emotional? Is it changing the mental? I don't know if I can nail that down, but I do know it was the spiritual change that changed it.
And I think they're in
the start.
I think that's what is the catalyst, if you will. And that one at times is a full body. Because I've always made all right. So if you know there's a temptation, and you know that the line is right there in the middle of that table, then hey, don't just try to get as close to the line and then pull back and see how you can handle it and how strong you are. No, there's the line. Then here's the line. I don't even want to get to that point. And so but that also is a mental / stop and think about it, a little bit of a spiritual of, okay, I want to make sure I'm walking in a way that pleases him too. The reason I brought the question up was I just wanted to, hey, let's wrestle with that, because I've been wrestling with that in a long way. It's kind of like Philippians, when Paul says, you work out your own salvation, do it with fear and trembling. Mm-hmm. But then he goes on a little bit further, and he basically says, I do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Mm-hmm. It's not I who live, but Christ now lives in me. Wait a minute. I thought I was working out my own salvation, but now it's Christ in me. And so it's one of those of how does that all work out? And I think that's what I'm getting at is setting your mind, setting your heart, and there are decisions you make, but there's also things that he does that are you going to get in the boat and let him drive, or are you just going to start swimming?
What's the word for salvation in the Greek on that?
Sozo.
I mean, is that the word that they're using? Okay. I was just curious.
I mean, it's basically work out your own faith, work out your own salvation.
But is he talking about not being saved?
No, he's not talking about being saved. He's just talking about,
sometimes I think that some things that are wrong with me, that I think are wrong, It's not wrong with you.
Right.
We're just different people. That's kind of where I tend to probably go in that direction. You know, there are some things will just bother you. It's not that they're they probably will send you. Well, I can just overlook it because that doesn't weigh me down. And it's not. I would say, you know, there's black sins, which, you know, we know those, the top 10, and you know, Galatians tells us all witchcraft and all that. But there are some sins that drag me down, or some things that will drag me down that won't drag you down.
Right.
And those are, I kind of think maybe he's talking in that area some.
I think it is. I think it's one of working out your salvation also involves what you believe. But make sure that you're continuing to grow, because I think, like you just said, to what may not be a struggle today, I can't promise you it might not be in 5 years, or what you're struggling with today 5 years from now may not be anything you even have to sweat.
Well, and Paul mentions, you know, you don't have no problem eating meat that's been sacrificed to idols.
Right.
But some of them did.
Yep.
Yeah, some of them, that was a stumbling block. So I'm wondering if he's kind of going that way with that.
I mean, I think there's a piece of that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you both seen the movie Christmas Vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the all-time Christmas classics. It's probably, and I think when the analogy hit me earlier this week, it dawned on me, this is about as far opposite of when you would normally be watching that movie as you could possibly be. This is,
It's hot.
middle of June.
Yeah.
So this is not normally the time you think of Christmas Vacation. But you know the scene where he's cannot get those lights to come on. He has decked out the house many, many different times, and they've checked every bulb 5,000 times, 10,000 light bulbs on 150 strands. And then all of a sudden, somebody goes in there and flips that one light switch, and they all come on. And he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know how, and he thinks he solved it, and then it goes away.
I fixed it.
And then he's kicking everything. He's mad as he can be, and then all of a sudden they flip the light switch on. To me, your spiritual health and your relationship with God is that light switch. All that we do in church and arguing over this sin or that sin, and is it even? I mean, I love these conversations, but even the spiritual versus physical versus mental, all these things we're trying to work out is like going through all those little light bulbs. And if you don't have the switch turned on, it doesn't matter what you do.
You got to be connected to the power.
Right.
Very oftentimes, I mean, man, look, I know many times, whether it's an appliance or something else, if you don't plug it in, doesn't matter. So you got to be plugged into the power source.
Yeah.
And that's, look, I hated the other day. Sometimes my internet service is a little bit sketchy. It'll be fine, and all of a sudden it might drop out, and I'll have to go reset the modem, this, that, and other. And sometimes when you reset it, it doesn't work. So then I'm calling Spectrum, and it is one of those things that the first thing they ask is it plugged in? And I'm always like, are you kidding me? You're going to ask me that.
Is the light on?
And he tells me, you would not believe how many times people call, this thing ain't working, I can't get my internet, why y'all are sorry, and you just hadn't plugged it in. And I said, you're kidding. He said, no, man. He said, most of my calls are one or two questions. Is it plugged in? And is it, basically, if you got the other one plugged into it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow.
It's a blue light on.
Yeah.
And I know that non-believers, or even I don't want to say pretend believers, but the people that are going through the motions, sometimes it can be probably a little annoying when you go to a Christian for advice, and we always seem to go to God as the answer. But He is. I mean, that's like it doesn't matter. There have been so many things. I'm getting worked up now. I'm sorry. There's been so many things in my life that I've tried to tackle.
Right.
That I have done checked every single box that I could possibly check to do this right. I know I did it right. I followed the manual perfectly. I followed my education perfectly. I followed everything that I've done and every single thing perfectly, and it just didn't work out. And then I've seen other things in my life that I didn't do anything right at all, and they worked out. And that's the only difference in any of them. I mean, it's just one of those things that I'm sorry, but common denominator is common denominator at some point. You got to point it out. That's what it is. With Him, anything's possible, and without Him, it doesn't matter what you do, you ain't going to get it right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't have anything to add to that. I think you got it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now doing it.
Yeah,
So
but, I mean,
different
but yeah, the reality of it is it ain't easy. But at the same time, you hit the nail on the head. The answer's there.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think too. Oftentimes it's, and I don't want to. I'm not jinxing it or anything else, but I think sometimes it's almost too easy. Wait a minute, that's too easy. I just got to go to God. Well, I'm not saying you go to God and every one of your problems is fixed. I'm just saying that you're gonna have storms. It's just whether your house is gonna fall down, because the rain came on both houses. Matthew 7, the end of Matthew 7. The rain fell on both houses. It's not whether you're going to have troubles and distress and problems like that. The problem is your anchor going to hold? Is your house going to stay standing? And are you going to make it through the storms? How do you make it through the storms? Well, what's your foundation? And I think that's what we're saying is, because the storms are coming, what's your foundation going to be?
And you 100% are right about that. And I think the difference is he gives you the peace that you acknowledge and see the storm. You just, rather than dwelling and being so upset about the storm, you thank him for the umbrella, you thank him for the shelter, and you thank him for the fact that you can feel his peace, and you realize that no matter how bad the storm is, it actually isn't as bad as I think it should be, because you can feel that peace. So yeah, the storms are still there, but how your physical, mental, and emotional reactions to that storm are totally different.
And how much of that mental, physical, and emotional is grounded in truth.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the whole thing is, rather than looking at percentages or something like that, all 4, 3, ever how many areas you want to bring in need to be grounded in the truth.
Yeah.
Or based in the truth, or rooted in the truth.
Yeah, and I think that you're maybe one way of thinking it is that he can make you numb to the pain of the storms, but it's not even that. It's a step beyond that.
Yeah.
Because
For
when I can't believe that I'm saying it, but I have felt positive, loving, joyous feelings in the middle of storms that don't seem possible. You know what I mean? And that's better than numbness.
That's the Lord. That's right.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, because I know you can. I've always said no. I think sometimes we have to be careful when we teach or when we preach that we make Christianity almost like a magic pill or a magic potion. I don't want it to be that.
Yeah.
It can't be.
It's not like going to the grocery store, I want this, I want that, I want this. But the weather's going to change. I can just guarantee you, the weather's going to change.
I hope it gets cooler.
Yeah.
You're
You're going to get some rain. You're going to get a storm. You just might not know when, but it's not going to be sunny every day. Your prayers are going to be answered, but they're like the weather too. Some you get, like summer's going to get here, but it might be early. It might be late, but it's coming. You can guarantee it. Your prayer, when you pray, he might give it. He might already answer it. He might answer it today. Well, you might have to wait, and he might even change it, which he does for me most of the time. So, well, thankfully, I'm glad he does, because I don't pray the way I should. The things I don't pray the way I'm supposed to pray. Of course, I don't think any of us do, but but all our prayers are going to be answered.
Yeah.
But we just don't know when, and we don't know how they're going to change.
So based on that, circumstances change. Emotions change. At the end, I go back to, that's why it's so important to ground everything in the truth. Because what doesn't change is truth. What doesn't change is Christ. While the circumstances may change around it, no, the truth is always the truth. And I think in a society we live in, it's more of a relative truth versus an absolute truth. Is Jesus Lord? Absolutely. Is Jesus the only way to salvation? Absolutely. Did he come and promise that I'll give you life? Not only life, I'm going to give you abundant life. He sure did. So now, how do I make sure that I walk in that truth even when the world says, nah, none of that's hogwash, or you can't do it that way, or no, you're just a placebo is all Jesus is, just a little crutch for people that are weak. And my answer is, you're exactly right. We are weak, and I can't make it on my own. I've seen what my life is when I make it on my own. But thank goodness there's Christ.
And he might not even change your circumstances. But
No.
I love the way the Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, before they even knew they were going to be delivered by fire, because they didn't. They just said, we're not going to bow down to you. I don't care what you do.
Whether
We're
he
not
chooses to answer or not.
answer or not. We're committed. And I think we do not have, and I have to include myself on that too. A lot of Christianity in America, we don't have committed Christians. Committed to what the truth is. We all want our desires to be met. We all want to be happy. And the Bible said, well, you're going to be happy, but you might not be too happy here. There's a lot of places in the Bible. Jeremiah was one. I don't think he had a very good life. Yeah. But then why did Solomon or David have such a great grand life? The heroes of my faith is not the first part of chapter 11, but it's when you start seeing some of them were sawed to death.
Yeah,
sawed in half.
Yep.
And the heroes of my faith now, I've learned, is the people that are faithful to God. Not me. I can get up and do what I want to, pretty much. But the person that is in the nursing home, the person that has to lean on somebody to help. Why are they even here? Well, they're here because God wants them here, and they're the ones that I think. Well, we all will, but when Jesus says, "Good and faithful servant," they were good and faithful, regardless. They couldn't do anything. They're just people have to feed them, or your spouse dies, your grandchildren. I really admire the older people in our church because they have been through it. I have one that 90-some years old and she can't get out of the house, but she's still faithful. Mm-hmm. I have one that comes on Sunday morning in a walker. She still comes. She don't feel like it. She's out of breath when she gets to her Sunday school class. I help her in. Try to most Sunday mornings. I have one that that's in the nursing home. That's she can't control her bladder, but she's still faithful. So that's the heroes that I have.
Well, and
I don't know if that's a good hero, but that's
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think it was one of, oftentimes we put this emphasis of, you got to do these great and mighty things for the Lord.
Right.
I think oftentimes the Lord just says, be persistent in the day in, day out, walk faithfully in the small things. I mean, he tests us in, hey, if you're going to be faithful in the small, then I'll trust you in the big. So, it's the persistence of the daily walk.
See, I do remember, my mother's still alive, but I remember her, she don't know who I am. Why is she still here?
Yeah, sorry.
She's can't go to the bathroom on her own. She can't get up. Why is she still here? I don't know. But now when I became a deacon and started going to see older people, that kind of started changing on me because I'm looking, why? You can't do a whole lot. And then I for some reason, I think I read the story about faithful servants in there. Then I realized it's being faithful when you can't do nothing. Being faithful regardless of your circumstances. So to me, those are my heroes.
No, ain't nothing wrong with that.
And I love Billy Graham.
Sure.
Yeah, but I do know Billy Graham had like 2,000 people helping him, getting everything set up too. But they're out there, they're serving the Lord. And I always thought when Jesus said, "Good and faithful servant, enter the kingdom of heaven," I always thought that was people that were on fire for God. But I never thought about it that means people that can't do a whole lot, that can't even probably dress themselves too.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's easy to be faithful when everything's going right, but when nothing's going right, it's hard.
That's right.
So, but anyway, that's just my thought. I'll let you.
No. I got nothing to add because a little bit I added was just be persistent in the day in, day out. Doesn't have to be the hard stuff. It doesn't have to be that we're going to go and preach a revival and Nineveh's going to repent. I think oftentimes it's, all right, will you be faithful just in the daily stuff?
Yeah.
And will you trust me with the small things and the big things?
And I went. And the other thing is, When I got here, I went over to someone's house today, and they had been watering that garden, or they were out there watering. She sat on the lowest step, because I said, and she was trying to, she wanted to write me a check because I was doing her tax work. And she was trying to get up like this, and like this.
Oh, yeah.
Can I help you? I said, no, I might bring you down. So I just stood there and carry conversation. I do have, she was looking at my legs. So I let her go, and she said, let me get up here on the second step. And then she had to get up on the third step, and she had to grab this rail to get up.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, my goodness, and she loves the Lord.
Yeah, and I know who you're talking about. Never had a negative thing to say hardly about anything.
And to go over there, it blesses me so much.
Yep.
It really does, to see somebody. That's an example I want to be.
I think I've almost been intentionally avoiding saying this, but now's probably perfect time to say it. Yeah, you said he doesn't always change your circumstances. Sometimes he does.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Sometimes it can get worse before it gets
That's
better.
it. So in the time that we've been doing this podcast,
Right.
it's almost a one-to-one inverse relationship of spiritual growth to physical happiness, physically getting the things that I want. But here's the thing about that. I don't bring it up to pat myself on the back by any means. I bring it up to give two different examples and maybe button this whole thing up a little bit. Me and Gabe were playing basketball the other day, and I could use Reese has been hitting some golf balls with me a little bit too, so I'm getting some time with both of them in that way. And I was telling Gabe the other day he was shooting pretty decent, and he missed one. And I said, get your elbow tucked in a little bit more, and he did that. And I said, okay, let's go over here and just do this drill to work on that. And he missed a bunch, and I said, you're gonna miss a lot.
Yeah,
That's fine.
We're not interested
right?
in going in.
Well, then he's doing something else, and I said, now let's work on, he's not using his legs very much. So I said, I want you to just literally start in a squat position, like all the way down to the ground, and then come up and shoot at the same time. He's like, you're crazy. I said, just do it. And I don't care if you make
Trust
it.
the process.
Right. That's right. Trust the process. I don't care if you make it or not. Don't think about making it. And then we did that for a little while, and then it was something else. And I said, okay, now I want you to throw it at the goal like you're throwing a football, because he's spinning it too much, getting his wrist in it too much. I said, again, don't worry about if you make it or not. And he's doing this stuff. He's not made 2 out of 50, I bet. I mean, he's getting so aggravated. And I said, just don't worry about if you make it.
This ain't about
okay?
scoring,
I
right?
promise. We're not keeping score right now. And then I finally said, all right, now just shoot some. I just threw in the ball. I said, think for everything that I've told you, and I know this is hard for you, but take everything that I've told you and forget about it, and just now I want you to look at the rim and make sure your eyes are looking at the back of the rim when you shoot it.
Right.
And he made like 7 out of 10, something like that. And I told him, I said, look, a lot of what we're going to do is going to be this way, okay? You're going to struggle, because it's not about making this shot right now. It's not about, we're teaching you something.
It's about learning.
And I could do the same thing with Reese. She's frustrated because she wants to whack a driver about 220 yards and she can't do it yet. And I said, look, it's a process. Just trust the process.
Just pray you hit the ball.
Right. Now, I can also look at the situation and say, okay, well, for some people that wasn't the case, right? Jeremiah, you've got, I'm just getting into some of these Old Testament stories. I mean, there's plenty of Old Testament stories that then your comfort becomes, well, at least my situation's not as hard as theirs was. That's your only encouragement. I can drive myself nuts trying to figure out, why am I here right now? Is this to work on this? Why is he working on that? Why is he working on this? But it goes back to something I said on the first show. As long as I know I'm where he wants me, I don't care. Because that peace and that humility and that freedom comes from understanding that whatever he's doing, whether it's this big, or I'm never going to know, if he's telling me to do it, he's the master, he knows what he's doing, I trust him.
Yep.
That's the whole difference in it. And to me, that's that power switch. Once you acknowledge that he's smarter than you and knows what he's doing,
He's sovereign.
it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to you. It will. Yesterday it did. Mm-hmm. When I was riding here yesterday, it mattered to me a lot, and I was mad as a bull. And what did it get me? A bad attitude that I had to work on when I got to church. So it's like, the more I can just sit back and say, it's whatever you're doing, I'm good with it.
Yeah,
Well, you must have changed before I saw you last night.
That was why I was white knuckling it. Yeah.
I didn't recognize anything.
It didn't take long. About 5-10 minutes after I got here, I was good.
Okay.
But that first 5 or 10 minutes, now I was white knuckling a little bit. I was
yeah.
smiling my way through it. Yeah.
What's tonight?
We're
I like
looking
last
at,
night.
last night was creation. Tonight is catastrophe and what's the C word they're using for corruption and catastrophe. So tonight we saw Adam and Eve, saw creation. Tonight we see Adam and Eve, and we're going to go to Noah.
Okay. That was good. That was good. You know, about your that one guy. He's very active.
Yeah.
Very active. I think his mother works here. But he loves to pray. Good.
Oh yeah,
good boy.
that kid's short.
yeah.
That kid's short.
Yeah,
I
enjoyed
attack.
that.
Another
yeah,
one.
yeah, and he's a good boy.
He called us out at snack time. He said, "Are we not going to pray before we eat our snacks?"
but it tickled me that he was trying to do this, and trying to and ask you what it was. I had no clue. Yeah, but he's very. I love.
He's a
on
sharp
Wednesday
kid.
nights he comes to eat because I think his mother leaves him or she not leaves him, but
Right.
he comes up to eat with us,
Right.
Because he's in our group, and he is funny.
Oh, listen, he hit me up in the parking lot one day and began asking me questions to the point I was like, "Well, kid."
And he knows
This
his Bible.
This guy's really thinking about some things.
He knows his Bible.
It was. I made some comment, and he just looked at me and he started asking me, and I said, well,
Oh, and his prayer was.
Yes.
It was a good prayer. When he gave the blessing last night before the snack time, it was a good prayer. This boy knows, he knows what he's.
I love it.
But I do like what you talk about creation, that Big Bang Theory. You know, I've always
That was a really good. I love the
I've
brick
always
house. Yeah.
thought, why do people believe that something so outrageous? But you know,
That everything
if you don't know
from
Christ,
that,
if you believe one lie, you can easily believe another one and another one and another one. It's the truth that is hard to believe for us. And no, I cannot prove there is no God, that there is a God, but you can't prove there's no God.
right.
I mean, I can't, because God's indivisible. Nobody will ever see him. We'll see Jesus, but the angels haven't even seen God. But that is probably the craziest theory I think I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. And people buy it.
And hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those guys that present that is their own pride. They are self-worship.
Oh, yeah.
People, well, he really knows what he's talking about. He really doesn't, but people think he does. And it's almost like it's not a theory. It's a fact.
Oh yeah.
How it's
oh yeah. They've got it as the fact of evolution. Well,
But
it's the theory of evolution.
It's just the craziest thing. I believe I could tell them tornado goes through a junkyard.
right.
Comes out with a Boeing 747
With
with
a
Netflix, air conditioned. They would believe that.
Yeah.
Just a random.
How can something so random produce that?
Yeah, I mean it's just.
See, I can understand the survival of the fittest side of evolution, in that if we have two people, that one's 7 feet tall and one's 4 feet tall, and all the trees are really, really tall, and all the food's on top of the trees, I can understand how over time the population would get
Right.
taller.
Right.
I don't understand what you think happened to suddenly make a 4-foot human species spawn something that was 7 feet tall instead of 4, and how all these mutations supposedly and I've never bothered doing the math because it's so big, but I really, at the lifetime of a generation of a species, how many generations would it take for these tiny little things to add up to evolving from apes or whatever they think we've evolved from? It's not that I'm, but here's the thing to me. I don't need to disprove that for it to change my faith. I think that's the thing. Like,
and you're not going to prove it, and you're not going to disprove it per se, but you can get enough.
Evolution, they've never found the horse going into a.
Yeah.
Right.
That's macro. And of course, that micro, within the species itself.
Oh, it happens.
It happens all the time.
It's
Look
called
at-
adaptation. It's called mutations. It's called adapting to your circumstances. You might have a butterfly that becomes more white over time because, in order to camouflage itself, God does those things, and so those things are real. I mean, if you think about every dog in America is kin. I mean, really. I know some dogs that don't look anything like each other, but they're all from that same breed.
And God loves a variety. We have multiple races.
yeah.
Orient. So He loves variety. So.
I think one of the things with the science stuff, especially the Big Bang Theory, I think that, and I mentioned it one time on here, so many people forget the theory part of that. Okay, and they say
that's
it's,
what-
you know,
that's
it's
it.
Big
It's a
Bang
fact.
theory, and it's we all came from you know, it's a fact that it's 14 billion years old. Is what they would say, but based on what? Based on the Big Bang theory. So, well, it's a fact that it's only 6,000 years old. Based on what? Based on the creation theory. What's the difference if you want to go that
I
route?
don't know. I wasn't there either one of
I
them.
wasn't there for either one of them.
Yeah, so they don't know.
And the only thing about I loved for the listeners who didn't get to be in the class last night.
Right.
You took a balloon and you popped it and you said, "No, what are?" And you put some letters in there.
Yeah, I had
Renee
some
was
little
really
beads,
worried.
like those beads that you little girls would make a bracelet that spells their name or their boyfriend's name or something
Yeah.
like that. So I took a bunch of those beads and put it in a balloon.
Renee was
Blew the
worried you were
balloon-
gonna suck
she
them
thought I was
down.
going to suck them all up. I wasn't going to suck. So I blew the balloon up and then I popped it and I said, "What are the chances that all those little blocks are going to form a book?"
Yeah.
I mean, that any of them would land beside each other and make a word is hard enough, much less a book. Well,
We couldn't even find them.
Somewhere at the end, I might sweep it up and I'll find about 30 or 40.
Yeah,
They went all
I
over
saw
the place.
one. But I mean, they were just
And that is kind of the theory of, okay, there was this one little molecule or some molecules, and all of a sudden an explosion happened, and bam-a-lam, we've got an Earth, we've got an atmosphere, we've got a sky, we've got ocean, we've got.
yeah.
See, that's I just can't get that far.
Well,
That
you
requires
had-
more faith than saying God said, "Let there be
Right.
light."
Yeah.
There was more possibility of you having those all those blocks come together in the Big Bang because you were in a closed space.
Yep.
You know, they could have bounced off the wall and come back. Or,
I mean, I think in a nutshell, I would say it this way for I think this might be kind of how we got here. Let's take somebody, they open the book and they say, "I want to know the truth about everything. I want to know the truth about the world." And somebody said that this book is the truth and it holds universal truth. They opened it up and they read Genesis and they said, "Oh, okay, cool." Then they read Exodus and they said, "I don't know if this book's true or not." And then they read Leviticus and they said, "This book's crazy. They don't know anything about it." And then they put it down. The rest of it, then they started coming up with other theories because that first book must not have been the truth.
Right.
So now I've got to disprove all. But the other example you gave was you showed a brick house and said, "What if a brick factory blew up? What are the odds that which of these would it land in a pile of bricks or would it land into a house?"
Would it land in rubble or a house?
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me how far people will go to try to again make it sound like it's all the Big Bang fact, and it's the only thing I can't quite reconcile with that from a science standpoint is okay. Well, if we're seeing light from billions of light years away, how did it get here? But at the same time, I don't have to dwell on that question very much because if God put it there, He can. I don't need to challenge God.
His vastness. That he, man.
Yeah, I'm not interested in getting into a math contest with God.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially when the other argument, the best thing they've come up with is that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess we can time travel. I mean, at night you can see the star that's supposed to be 7, 8, 10 light years away. That light, I guess that's time travel. That's the only thing I know. You know, travel back in time or forward in time.
Right.
Well, because we don't know we don't even know. Okay, let's say we see something that is supposedly 10 billion light years away. Well, then that means that the light left there 10 billion years ago. Ooh. We don't know where it was or what it was 10 billion years ago or whatever. By that theory,
Right.
It's probably long disappeared, moved around wherever. It might have been 400 light years away when he sent the light.
I don't even know how they come up with light years. I don't know the mathematics behind it. I don't even know if it's a valid theory or if it's a fact. Or
Yeah.
You can study space all you want to.
Yeah, I just don't know how do you know that's true? Light. How did you measure that? But I don't know.
Well, it just goes to show how big our God is, number one, and that He created all of this with just by speaking. I think that's to me, it just blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think down deep, I mean that's something you gotta be willing to nail down. And I for one am one that'll say, look, I just cannot get past how everything works together. Mm-hmm. When you've got air and CO2 and oxygen, when you've got how everything just works, I'm sorry, there is an intelligent design behind this baby.
Well, even our own
And
bodies.
A design requires a designer. And so it's hard for me. Even some of the sharpest, and this is where my son Daniel is in biomedical engineering, he'll say, no, most of the professors I work with, they realize, no, when they start looking at the intricacies of the heart, the body, and how it just, nobody could, that doesn't just happen. That is a design, man. And that requires a designer.
All these little parts of our body that we don't give much thought to, when one of them stops working, we end up in a hospital for a month. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that when it's easy to say we take them for granted, but and we do. That is a part of it. But
let your spleen stop working.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all of these little things, especially as you get later in life and they start to fail on you and you're taking 87 different medications or whatever, then you start to really realize how important all these pieces were to work together for all these years. And I think at the end of the day, you can study space all you want to, and I love space. I think it's one of the coolest things in the world. But at the end of the day, whether you take a scientific approach or a creation or a God approach, however you want to define that.
And I think you can do both.
Yeah. Whatever you're done with it, both paths are going to lead you to the exact same answer. It is way bigger than I am ever going to be able to comprehend.
Theory, and you settle it.
And if I end up landing somewhere that says it's way bigger than I'm ever going to understand, and science is already there. Science knows it's beyond our understanding.
Right.
Like, once they realized that the universe was expanding faster than the speed of light, I'm like, then y'all running out of... The information you have available is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. If you hadn't figured it out by now, you're not going to.
That's right.
So once I get to that point, okay, I'm never going to understand it. Do I want to not understand it with God or without God?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that I'm going to go back to the thing that has proven itself to me here many times over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And say,
over and
he
over
understands it. I may not.
And I don't need to understand it.
No.
That's right.
All I need is hold his hand. I think there's a song about that.
Amen.
You don't need to understand. All you need is to hold his hand.
By the way, I've heard that one.
It's a gospel song.
I did not
You
know.
sleep in church or something.
Yeah.
I've always thought of, okay, it's binary. You're saved, you're in, you're not.
Right.
But is there a different... Are you rewarded more based on your righteousness here in heaven?
I think you're rewarded based on your obedience, which, again, righteousness, you can make the argument, same thing. And there are several crowns that are given out.
So not just because we're all there doesn't mean we all have the same status, so to speak, if that's the right word.
I don't know if I'd say status as much as, okay, there's going to be folks who do
There's going to be
crowns,
organized,
and there's going to be people that have, but at the same time, all those crowns, you lay them at Jesus' feet.
Yeah.
So it's not a oh yeah, look at me.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's going to be that. I don't know that there's going to be because you are. And I may be wrong here. I mean, I could make an argument. It could be that you did so much on earth. Now you're going to be mayor of the left side of
structure.
heaven.
Yeah, there might be structural, but there's just not enough. The Bible just doesn't give us enough detail on what's going to happen to have doctrine on it.
Yeah.
Everybody's all over the place, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it just goes back to, yes, there will be rewards. Yes, people will be there.
Yeah.
And yes, you don't have to worry about it right now.
And God's throwing the party, so quit nitpicking over what He's going to serve.
So, but I mean, there might be, and there probably will be. There are certain angels that have different status, and so possibly I don't know.
And there are 12 thrones.
But
at the same time, I'm not worried about. Be obedient to what is before me. Kind of like your heroes. Be faithful in what God's called you to do today.
Yeah.
And you'll be happy anyway.
Yeah.
You won't have to worry about who's the top.
I don't think there's going to be that pettiness that we have in this world of, well, they got this and I didn't.
So it must not be that important. It's not important enough that we need to know now.
Well, that's the thing. When we're there and we're all like Him. I mean, like I said one time before, it's like just getting a little taste of it here. You start to realize, you know what? Trying to put it into words or box up what it's going to be like when we're up there, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And God doesn't tell us a lot of things because we wouldn't understand it if He did. Revelation is still a big mystery.
Yeah. Well, 2-week break without you guys. I'm gonna miss y'all for this too. I don't know what to do next week.
We're gonna have communion before you leave, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Communion is this Sunday.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pray for that for you. Hopefully it worked. I wasn't involved in that. What went on, but I heard about it. That was funny.
Oh, it was great. Well, both times when we did it in fellowship hall, it was like they're like the Keystone's cops up in here.
What was that? Can that go on the show, or is this an cut?
And I told them, I said, now guys, different scenario. You got 4 sections. You got, it ain't as deep. I said, have y'all mapped out? Oh yeah, we mapped it out. Well, I went to go hand the plates with the bread to the deacons, and there's one when I picked it up. I said, there ain't no bread on nothing. They forgot it. And so I looked at Bernice. I said, there ain't no bread on this. I was trying to do it without anybody, catch this. And so I just went. I think I went ahead and just panned it out and like go pretend like you got something.
Okay, you got bread.
And he walked to the back and just waited.
Y'all might just want to do a buffet this
Well,
time. So
and that's the thing is we had to have a special meeting last Friday.
Yeah.
Bernice called it at 5:00. And I'm like, we're meeting at 5:00 on Friday to do the Lord's Supper. That's like the easiest
A week
thing.
ahead of time.
Yeah, a week ahead of time. And he gave everybody their assignment. And he said, now here's what we do. And it was funny because I'd had a funeral that afternoon. So I said, I want to cut and tie. And they came and I said, boys, this was dress rehearsal. Why ain't you dressed for it? That kind of thing. But it's, yeah. And then what got me was somebody came back and said, some of these boys just don't know how to read where they're supposed to go. And I think he was one of the ones. He was one of the ones that was made it so bad.
That was what was so funny.
Yeah.
I like to die when I heard that.
I was like, where did that go right in?
Speaking of judging, is the face-to-face series over?
No, we still got some more.
Okay.
But we take
this
a break
week,
for communion.
Communion's usually a shorter
And then
one.
we'll take a break next week because we're on 4th of July. So I'll do a kind of a righteousness exalts the nation type sermon.
Okay.
Just a little bit. In fact, the next 2 Sundays are not necessarily long Sundays because communion here at this place takes a long time for some reason.
Yeah.
It's just slow.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to do a long sermon. Right now, it's still early, but right now I'm leaning towards 1 Corinthians 6, 19, and 20, which is actually, I kind of quoted it a lot. And here lately I've been saying it a lot. So I don't think it's something the Lord has just really been impressing on myself or impressing on me that, hey, let's get this right. And you're bought with a price. Mm-hmm. Therefore, glorify God with your body. You are not your own.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm going to kind of pinpoint to, and we talked about that a lot today, was these gray areas.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, it's not necessarily, that's a sin, that isn't.
Yeah.
A lot of times it is, which one's going to glorify God the most?
Yeah.
And that's, because I'm from one of, I can take you to the Old Testament and say you should never get tattoos. I'm not under the Old Testament law.
Yeah.
So now my question is, okay, should I get a tattoo? Number one, I'm not, because I don't like pain. And number 2 is I'm not attached to anything on this world that close that I want it on my body.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm not going to do it with pain. But is it if somebody else goes and does it? I'm not judging them. I'm not saying they're going to hell. That's for sure. But I'm saying is, does that glorify God?
Yeah.
And so for some, it may be a cross, or it might be something that, hey, they can use it to witness to people.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. But now there's some who would argue, no, you don't ever. I mean, I had a former secretary that, man, if you came in with a tattoo, you were already 3 steps closer to hell than anybody else.
Yeah.
It used to be wrong. Don't get cremated because you have to be
buried.
That was
cremation
wrong.
was one.
I heard that. I've heard that one before, and I've thought, well,
think
that's out of my hands.
That's a Southern thing, not a gospel thing.
Yeah.
Now, what they do get it from is in the Old Testament, the pagans would burn the bodies. And so that's why, because Israel was told, no, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so I, for one, understand that, okay, I could see bringing that forward a little bit, but again, I'm not under the law.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, you throw mine in the creek, throw my body in the creek, I don't care.
Well, I think that's really where that original analogy of Christmas Vacation came from me, is that the Pharisees, and trying to follow all these rules and trying to nitpick every single little bitty thing, it's like going and trying to check all those light bulbs. When at the end of the day, if it ain't plugged in, what difference does it make?
That's right. All right.
Well,
man,
I think we got 2. I think that's probably
go.
what we end up doing, is making it just 2.
There you go.
2 little 45-minuters
Are you
for the next little
putting
bit.
one out per week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure when I'm going to see how quick I can get to editing. this week. So it might be a little bit before I get to it. But
Appreciate it, guys.
Oh,
you're not going to be
man,
here
I
next
gotta
week.
Stand up. Golly, yeah, believe me, man, I watched way more pro wrestling than I should, and I still do.
Still do.
Still do.
Still one of them guilty pleasure. Don't
It
go away.
is. Listen, as Renee says, does it come on every night? And it's every night but Thursday and Sunday.
Well, the matches are rigged, but they do a
what you
lot of
talking
physical
about?
stuff.
Don't you ruin it for him. He didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't.
They asked Ric Flair one time, Sally Jesse Raphael,
I mean,
when wrestling was so big,
Yeah.
they asked him, is it fake? And he said, no, ma'am, it is not fake. He said, it is choreographed,
Yes.
but it is not fake.
Right.
And it may be determined who's going to
Who's
win,
gonna win,
but
but-
it ain't fake. He said, you go out there and let me throw you through a table or let me throw you through this. And he said, you'll find out it ain't fake.
There's a
And,
whole bunch of stuff that I've seen that I think that looks like it's gotta hurt.
Well, the
Well,
mat,
you know, I mean-
the mat kind of bounces. That kind of helps.
gives you some.
Yeah.
But then they're throwing each other, I'm telling you, some of the things they do to each other now, they'll jump from 20, 30 feet high. And I mean, it's just, I'm
But
kind of
they-
like,
yeah,
he wrestled for years, and I loved him. You always got to have a heel, and usually you had them from either Iran or Russia.
Yeah. and then the Hulk kind of just took it over.
Yeah,
he
then Hulk came on the
became
scene
one
in the
of
early 80s, 82, 83, WrestleMania, and
That's
man,
right.
I can tell you, I used to buy wrestling magazines, I used to buy the action figures. Man, I was into it. Still love it. Nobody in my
They even had a
family will watch it
comic
with me.
about
Now, Nate will come in there and sit down with me and kind of watch it and laugh. And, oh, look at there. He's still wrestling. He knows who the guys are. The other night, Sheamus was on there. He said, Sheamus is still wrestling? I said, oh, man, he's one of the big ones. So, yeah.